Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Deep Dive Podcast. Hope you are doing well and taking good care of yourself. We go beyond the headlines and uncover the truth behind real stories, real crimes, and real consequences. Let's move towards today's topic.
I want you to picture a scenario for a moment. You are out walking on a hiking trail.
Okay.
It's a cold winter afternoon, the kind where the chill really bites at your cheeks, and the woods around you are dense and completely quiet.
That deep winter quiet.
Right. So there is someone walking just ahead of you on the path. You can see them perfectly clearly because they are wearing this bright red jacket.
Oh, so they'd stand out like a neon beacon against the dark trees.
Exactly. You watch them walk, keeping a steady pace, until the trail curves ahead. They step around a rocky bend in the path, temporarily breaking your line of sight.
Right.
Keep walking. You reach that exact same bend just a few seconds later. You step around the corner, fully expecting to see that bright red jacket still bobbing along the trail ahead of you. But they are completely gone.
Just vanished.
Completely. There is no sound of snapping twigs. There are no footprints veering off into the brush. There is absolutely no trace that anyone was ever there.
It honestly sounds like the setup for an impossible locked room mystery. But we are actually looking at a documented historical event today.
Yeah, that's our mission for this deep dive. We are heading deep into the cold forests of Vermont to unpack one of the most chilling and inexplicable mysteries in American history. It's centered around an area that has claimed so many missing persons, it eventually earned a very dark moniker.
The Bennington Triangle.
The Bennington Triangle. And it all starts with the impossible vanishing of an 18-year-old girl named Paula Jean Weldon.
And we are going to look at this with a highly analytical lens. The goal here isn't just to tell a ghost story. We are breaking down the exact timeline and the incredibly baffling forensic anomalies of this disappearance. Even if you are familiar with the tragic mechanics of how disappearances typically happen, this specific case defies all standard forensic logic. The absolute lack of physical evidence here is staggering. People go missing all the time, yes, but they do not vanish into thin air in a matter of seconds without leaving a single disturbance in the environment.
Right, it just doesn't happen. So looking at the events of that day, which was December 1st, 1946, what really stands out to me is just how incredibly mundane it started.
Very normal day.
You've got this quiet campus at Bennington College. Winter is definitely setting in. It's freezing, though the snow hasn't actually started falling quite yet.
Just that unmistakable, bitter mountain chill in the air.
Yeah, and the campus is settling into the early darkness of a Sunday evening. So into this setting, we have Paula Jean Weldon. She's a sophomore at the college.
And by all accounts, she was intelligent, highly capable, and rather soft-spoken. What we have to isolate immediately is the complete lack of a psychological trigger for what happens next.
Right, no warning signs.
None. Witness accounts from her friends and her roommate emphasize that her behavior that day was completely baseline. There were no limiting exams causing severe distress, no erratic behavior, no relationship turmoil. It was, in every measurable way, an entirely ordinary Sunday.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because her next decision seems so casual, yet so pivotal. At around 2:45 p.m., Paula tells her roommate she is going to go out for a walk, just a short hike to get some fresh air. She doesn't gear up for a wilderness expedition. She throws on a pair of jeans, some sneakers, and that bright red jacket.
And the closing is a critical forensic detail here. This is December in Vermont, and she is wearing sneakers, not heavy winter boots.
Right.
She took no backpack, no map, and no flashlight. This tells us exactly what her mindset was. She had absolutely no intention of trekking deep into the wilderness or surviving overnight. This was meant to be a quick afternoon stroll to stretch her legs.
She headed straight for the long trail. And considering what you likely know about Glastonbury Mountain's reputation today, it's wild to think she viewed it as just a peaceful walking path near her school.
She was from out of town, so she was almost certainly unaware of the dark whispers surrounding those specific woods.
So she sets off. And because she is wearing that incredibly bright red jacket, she is highly visible. She stands out sharply against the muted browns and grays of the pre-snow forest.
And this high visibility is exactly why we can trace the timeline of her final movements with such undeniable clarity.
Yeah, let's track those final movements. Several witnesses confirm seeing her on her way to the trail. A local man even offers her a ride in his car as she's walking toward the mountain, but she politely declines.
Just a normal interaction.
Exactly. Then another couple sees her near the entrance of the trail itself, and then we reach the rocky bend.
This is where the geometry of the situation becomes impossible. Farther up the path, there is a middle-aged couple enjoying a hike. They are walking in the same direction as Paula, just a short distance behind her. They have a clear view of her walking ahead of them. That bright red jacket is a focal point. They are close enough to keep her continuously in their line of sight. They're essentially an accidental surveillance system, tracking her progress simply by walking behind her.
And the trail ahead curves sharply around an outcropping of rock. The couple watches as Paula reaches the curve. She turns the rocky corner, breaking their line of sight. The couple continues walking at their normal pace. Just a handful of seconds pass. They reach the exact same rocky corner, step around the bend, look down the long stretch of trail ahead, fully expecting to see her, and she is utterly gone.
As if the woods had swallowed her whole. The impossibility of this moment is what frustrates investigators to this day. A human being simply cannot cover enough distance in a matter of seconds to completely vanish from the line of sight on a marked trail.
But hold on, I know people listening might be thinking, couldn't she just slip down a steep ravine where the couple couldn't see her? I mean, people get lost mere feet from trails all the time. A wrong step, a tumble down a bank, and suddenly you're out of sight.
You'd think so, yes. But let's look at the acoustics and the brush density of that specific can. If she had tripped and fallen into the brush, there would be broken branches, disturbed earth, and most importantly, noise.
Oh, true.
The winter underbrush in Vermont is dry and brittle in December. Crashing through it sounds like breaking glass. But there was absolutely no sound of a struggle, no sound of someone falling. There were no footprints leaving the dirt trail. It was as if she ceased to exist the moment she rounded that rock.
It's chilling. Put yourself in the shoes of that couple walking behind her for a second. Because she was just a college student out for an afternoon walk, when she essentially evaporated, no alarm bells went off for them.
Right, they didn't know her.
They probably just assumed she walked faster than they realized, or maybe found a shortcut. It isn't until night falls quickly over the mountains that the panic sets in back at her dormitory.
And the temperature drops rapidly. The darkness in an unlit forest is absolute. Her roommate gets worried, but the police aren't actually called until midnight.
And the massive physical search of the woods doesn't officially begin until the next morning. So whoever or whatever took her has a terrifying 18-hour head start into the freezing unknown before the first boot hits the trail.
And when that search does begin, it is monumental. We are talking about hundreds of volunteers pouring into the forest. Local police, state authorities, search and rescue teams.
Right.
They establish dense search grids. They have planes flying overhead doing aerial sweeps. And crucially, they bring in highly trained bloodhounds to track her scent.
Which brings us to the scent trail anomaly. I really want to dig into this because it's one of the most terrifying forensic details of the whole case.
Let's look at the science of scent tracking for a moment. Bloodhounds are essentially tracking skin rafts. These are microscopic, desquamated skin cells that humans shed at a rate of about 40,000 cells per minute.
Wow.
Bacteria feed on these cells, creating a highly specific scent signature. Cold weather, like the freezing temperatures that day, actually tends to preserve scent close to the ground. It traps it in the moisture of the soil. So the handlers give the dogs Paula's scent, and the dogs lock onto it immediately. They track her path perfectly up the long trail. They pass the spot where she declined the ride. They head up toward that rocky bend.
And then they just stop, right in the middle of the trail.
Abruptly. The dogs don't wander off the path into the brush, which would indicate she walked into the forest. They don't start circling a specific tree. They literally stop moving forward on the dirt path and lose the scent entirely.
That's just wild.
Now, under certain extreme meteorological conditions, like a massive sudden drop in barometric pressure, a scent can theoretically vaporize or disperse too widely to track. But that didn't happen here.
No.
The trail just went cold at an exact coordinate in the middle of an open path. Handlers noted it was as if she was simply lifted straight up into the air.
That is deeply unsettling. So we have this impossible vanishing. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, if you step back and look at the broader history of the Bennington Triangle, you realize Paula's disappearance wasn't an isolated incident. This specific geography holds a much darker, repetitive pattern.
If we expand the scope beyond 1946, that exact same region claims several other individuals under incredibly bizarre, logically defiant circumstances. We have to look at the other victims to understand why this area earned its reputation. Let's look at Mitty Rivers, for example, who vanished a year prior, in 1945.
And Mitty Rivers wasn't an unprepared college student in sneakers. He was a 74-year-old expert outdoorsman and a lifelong local guide. He knew every single inch of that mountain.
Exactly the opposite profile of Paula. Rivers was actively leading a group of 4 hunters through the woods near the Long Trail. He simply stepped ahead of the group for a moment to scout a path. He was barely out of their sight, and he was never seen again. When searchers combed the area, the only thing they ever found was a single, unexpended rifle cartridge lying in a stream, which they believed belonged to him. A seasoned woodsman vanishes mere yards from his party, leaving no trail.
And then you jump forward a few years to 1950 and you have the case of Paul Jepson. This one is entirely different but equally baffling. Paul was an 8-year-old boy. His mother left him playing happily in his family's pickup truck while she went to feed the pigs on their property. And this property was situated right on the edge of these same woods.
She was gone for perhaps an hour. When she returned, Paul was gone. And here is where the canine forensics get strange again. They brought in bloodhounds for Paul.
Right.
The dogs picked up his scent, tracked it away from the farm, and followed it to a nearby local highway. And then, just like with Paula, the scent stopped dead. It didn't cross the road, it didn't trail off into the ditch, it just ended on the asphalt.
As if he was plucked into the air. And just a few weeks after Paul Jepson disappeared, you have Frida Langer. She was 53 years old, an experienced hiker who knew the terrain well. She was out hiking with her cousin and she slipped and fell into a small stream, getting her clothes wet.
She tells her cousin to wait right there, saying she's going to run back to their camp, which is only half a mile away, to change her clothes quickly. It's broad daylight. It's a short, familiar path. She jogs off toward the camp and never arrives.
Wow.
But Frida's case has a grim addendum that the others don't. 7 months later, her body was found in an open clearing.
But the truly bizarre part is that the clearing where she was found had been extensively searched by volunteers, police, and aircraft months earlier. It was an open area. They would have seen her. It was as if she had been placed there long after the massive search grids had been disbanded.
Right. When you lay these cases out, Mitty Rivers, Paula Jean Weldon, Paul Jepson, Frida Langer, you have a terrifying cluster of absolute vanishings. Different ages, different experience levels, but all happening in the exact same region, all sharing that signature trait of an inexplicable lack of immediate physical evidence.
Which brings us to the inevitable debate. How do we rationally explain this? When you look at the standard theories applied to missing persons cases, they generally fall into 2 buckets: foul play or misadventure. Did a kidnapper happen to snatch Paula in those few seconds? Or did she just wander off the trail, succumb to the freezing elements, and perish in the wilderness?
It's human nature to want to force a logical, grounded explanation onto a terrifying situation. A lot of people desperately cling to the idea that she must have just gotten lost.
Sure.
But if you talk to experienced search and rescue professionals, they overwhelmingly reject the lost in the woods theory for this specific case. And they do that based purely on mathematics and the scale of the 1946 search protocols.
I struggle with that, though. I mean, if you're looking at the search grid they used in 1946, you have to realize they didn't have GPS tracking for the volunteers. It was line-of-sight visual sweeping. Couldn't they have just missed her?
It's a fair question. But consider the sheer volume of boots on the ground. You had the National Guard, hundreds of local volunteers, Boy Scout troops, all walking shoulder to shoulder in massive sweeps. Even with rudimentary coordination, the density of that search was immense.
That makes sense.
More importantly, consider what they were looking for. They were looking for a bright, synthetic red dye that does not exist in the natural winter palette of a Vermont forest.
That's true. That red jacket is the elephant in the room.
If a human being wanders into the woods and succumbs to the elements, they leave a chaotic trail. Look at standard search theory. People who are freezing experience paradoxical undressing. They tear off their clothes, they drop belongings. Animals scatter remains over time. Something should have been found. A sneaker. A piece of red fabric caught on a branch. A bone fragment a year later. To scour that mountain with hundreds of people and find absolutely zero physical trace of a bright red jacket is statistically staggering. When investigators say it was as if she stepped into another world, they aren't trying to be dramatic. They are expressing a profound forensic frustration.
Which naturally leads people straight into the deep lore of Glastonbury Mountain. Because long before college students were hiking the Long Trail, the indigenous Native American tribes of the region had their own deeply held beliefs about that land. They actively warned people to stay away from certain areas of the mountain. They believed the land was cursed, that it was a place where the fabric between worlds was thin, and that the mountain actively consumed human life.
And when you look at the environmental anomalies reported in those woods by modern hikers, you start to understand why those ancient legends formed. The historical accounts of the Bennington Triangle aren't just about missing people. They are accompanied by highly specific, bizarre environmental phenomena.
Like the strange lights in the sky that locals would report seeing hovering over the mountain ridges.
Yes, but more disturbingly, there's a recurring report of an unnatural, eerie stillness that descends upon the forest. Hikers who have spent time in the deep woods of Glastonbury Mountain frequently describe moments where the environment undergoes a sudden, radical shift. You have to imagine the normal ambient noise of a forest.
The wind rustling the dead leaves, the chirping of birds, the hum of insects.
Right. Suddenly it all stops. A complete, heavy silence drops like a physical blanket over the area. No birds, no insects, not even the sound of the wind. A total sensory void. And it is often within this bizarre, unnatural silence that the profound disorientation occurs.
Just picturing that, well, walking on a trail and suddenly every single sound of nature is just switched off like a light bulb. It would make your blood run cold. And that brings us back to Paula. Decades have passed. More than 75 years later, the factual timeline remains a blank page after 2:45 p.m. on December 1st, 1946.
Still entirely unknown.
There is no body. There is no evidence. There is no deathbed confession from a kidnapper. There is only the story of an 18-year-old girl in a bright red jacket who turned a rocky corner on a winter afternoon and vanished from the face of the earth.
It is a mystery that has perfectly preserved itself by leaving absolutely nothing behind to study.
And because of that void, the local lore has only grown. There is a modern-day legend whispered among hikers in Vermont to this day. They say that on bitterly cold winter evenings, if you are walking the Long Trail alone, you might catch a glimpse of something moving on the path ahead of you. A sudden, vivid flash of red slipping quietly between the dark trees, always staying just out of reach.
It's a terrifying image.
The local warning is very clear. If you see her, if you see that red jacket in the distance, you turn back immediately. Because the last people who tried to follow her around the bend never found their way out of the woods.
It's a haunting legend. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, moving away from the supernatural and looking strictly at human physiology and psychology. Think about that eerie, unnatural silence reported by so many people in that specific forest. Human spatial awareness, our ability to know where we are in a physical space, relies heavily on acoustics. Our brains constantly process microechoes from the environment. The sound of the wind bouncing off trees tells our brain how dense the forest is and where the boundaries are.
So it's essentially a subconscious sonar system we don't even know we're using.
Precisely. Now, what happens if you take a hiker and drop them into an environment where that ambient noise drops to absolute zero? It creates an anechoic chamber effect in the middle of nature.
Wow.
When your brain is suddenly deprived of all acoustic input, it loses its map. It can induce immediate severe vertigo and deep psychological panic. Perhaps the mountain doesn't swallow people through ghosts or curses. Perhaps that profound, anomalous silence simply shatters a hiker's equilibrium. Their mind panics, they completely lose their sense of direction, and in a desperate state of sensory starvation, they run blindingly off the trail, becoming utterly and impossibly lost in the very landscape they were frantically trying to escape.
This was all for today. Stay happy, stay safe, comment your views down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you next time with another story in Deep Dive.